Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, whatever your time zone. Welcome. This is Digital Transformation Talk, and I'm your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show where we talk about digital transformation, the tools, the techniques, the technologies, and most of all, the results and how they can help the performance of our organizations, of our careers, and even society today. Now, with all the attention and discussion about digital transformation and the technologies behind that transformation, it can be easy to forget that people make the transformation and innovation and success happen. And the turbulence of the past few years have made the people part a bit more challenging for organizations because it's caused many workers to reevaluate what they expect from their employers on a lot of fronts, but certainly when it comes to how they experience their working lives, what we expect from the technologies and systems that we must work with every day, and what we expect from the working climate and the corporate culture of the organization as well. Indeed, the importance of an employee experience continues to grow in tandem with increasing expectations around customer experience, which we explored last week in this show. Customer experience and the fact that customers are really expecting better from the organizations they interact with. And all of this comes at a time when many organizations are scrambling to retain current employees and recruit new talent. Look, if employees are struggling to get their jobs done, if systems are outdated or we really lack the right tools for the job, we'll leave or we'll move on to some other position. Or if we feel that the company's out of step with cultural expectations, things like inclusivity and equal pay, environmental sustainability, or if the company's just seen as behind the times, then they'll simply move on to another job, to your competition, or become your competition. So it's really an interesting mix of considerations today, part technological, part societal, and all of it changing rapidly and interacting in somewhat unexpected ways. And that's the real challenge, sort of rectifying and aligning these two seemingly different things. And that's what we're here to talk about today. What does it actually mean, and what should we do about it? We've got two great guests with us today. We'll be discussing how digital transformation contributes to employee experience, what we should expect from and consider in our hiring strategies as well as our technological strategies, and ultimately how all of this should come together in order for our organizations to be more relevant, more modern, more inclusive, more rewarding, more fulfilling for the people who work here, enabled by digital technology. So stand by for another great discussion today. But before I introduce our guests, I do want to mention that we want to hear from you too. After all, we're a great community of practitioners and experts here. So please join in with your comments in the chat section. And if you have a question for one of our guests along the way, please enter it into the Q&A feature. And I'll be working to get them into the flow of the show as we have time, and certainly looking to have a few minutes at the end for some questions as well. All right, with all of that said, let's introduce our guests today, starting with Adrian Winkles. Adrian is the Open Web Application Security Project Education Committee Chair and Director of the Cybersecurity and Networking Research Group at Anglia Ruskin University. Welcome, Adrian. Adrian is joined also by Orly Lobel. Orly is a distinguished professor of law at the University of San Diego and author of The Equality Machine, Harnessing Digital Technology for a Brighter Future. Orly, are you with us as well? I know we've been having some difficulty with Orly on the technical side. Hunter, will Orly be joining us as well? All right, let's move on. Adrian, welcome aboard. Thank you for being with us today. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from just outside Cambridge in the UK, Kevin.
Very good. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I do see Orly with us. Well, Orly, you're in the
Hi, can you
same
hear
office
me?
building that Adrian is in. How does that work? Welcome aboard,
And
Orly.
hopefully
Where
you
are you
can hear
calling in
me.
from? Yes, ma'am, we
I'm
can.
here
Thank
in
you
San
very
Diego,
much for joining us
California.
today. Okay, very good. Interesting. Same skyline. That's great. All
I
right.
think
Well,
Adrian
thank you,
copied me.
Orly, and thank you, Adrian, for being with us today. Um, Listen, as you may have heard from my introduction, I'm very interested in this confluence between the people side of transformation and the technology side of transformation. And increasingly, it's all about experience of our customers and experience of our employees being indeed customers of the organization. And I want to point us today to a news article that was published recently by Enterprise Times that talks about a new Infosys report highlighting reskilling, talent diversity, and the need for digital automation in business today. It's called The Future of Work in 2023. And the report urges us to diversify our talent pools and improve skill developments for employees to take advantage of what is a great profit opportunity connected with digital transformation. Um, it talks about how we'll see a continuing hybrid workforce and digital engagement as we move forward that will enable firms to build more diverse and creative teams. Um, do you agree that the combination of hybrid working and digital transformation automation will be an enabler for a superior customer experience and more diverse and creative teams? It seems these two things are almost at odds or different. What is your impression, Adrian? What do you have to say about this this
I think,
confluence?
I mean, going forwards, as we've seen throughout the COVID pandemic, home working or remote working is here to stay. And I like to think of it more as the ability, well, to have agile working, the ability to work from anywhere. And I think the technology has to be the enabler for employers in the future. It isn't just about working from home; it's about the ability to work from anywhere, whether it be on other customers, on other suppliers' premises, customer premises. The ability to work from home in the car or in your pajamas, from a hotel,
Right.
wherever. I mean, and it's that, but it's also that seamless integration of all the tools you need that's going to automate that experience. So the tools have to work seamlessly for those experiences to work for you and to work for your employees. And as we've seen in many industries, um, getting the right talent and getting the right skills and retaining the staff that you need is key in those circumstances. And if you get it wrong, then people vote with their feet and they go elsewhere.
Do you believe that the rise of remote work was really an enabler for this new different feeling in the hearts of employees in terms of what they expect from employers? I mean, I don't have to go into the office anymore. I don't have to necessarily work for you anymore. There's this a different sort of spirit in employees today. Um, Orly, do you
Yeah.
feel that really this is just an outgrowth of what normally would have happened, or did COVID and remote work really push that over the edge in a new and different way?
I think
Are
these
you with?
trends have been. Can you hear me? Yeah. These trends
Yes.
have been underway for a long time, but COVID certainly accelerated a lot of it. I think that technology is always a double-edged sword. There's a lot of research about how face-to-face interactions, how being in one place, kind of the water cooler effect of teams interacting together and having kind of time to play and experiment is very fruitful for innovation. But it's also, true that we needed for a long time to expand our talent pools and to enable much more flexibility at work and much more kind of diversity that comes with the fact that we now can recruit globally. Now we can allow people who have different abilities in terms of accessibility, people who are immunocompromised, women who on average have more of the family work-life balance, challenges that need to be accommodated. All of this has meant that actually using technology to harness a larger pool or more diverse pool, and then also use technology to evaluate performance in ways that are much more accurate and effective than kind of who's putting in the most time, who, closes the door behind them at the office at the latest hour. That has never been a good measure of, how productive somebody is, how much they're contributing. It was really an artificial thing. And I think now we can use digital tracking and machine learning to really see, what are the contributions, who deserves credit in ways that really are about performance and talent.
I see. So actually using the automation and data analysis techniques that we might use in business process for a human resource process, really adding a new level of competency and accuracy to the human resource process within the organization in terms of evaluation, promotion, hiring even. How is that done? What are some of the techniques that you might recommend to organizations that are looking to do just that, apply digital transformation technologies to the human aspects of their processes?
Well, there's so many new products and new applications. It's, as we're all really excited on kind of figuring out AI right now with Chat GPT and, all these new capabilities that are really kind of bombarding us and accelerating all around us. In my book, The Equality Machine, I go through different aspects of the hiring process and the evaluation process. So I'll give you one example of using machine learning really effectively. We all have
Please.
all kinds of unconscious biases where we don't know what creates motivation to apply for a job and to stay at a job versus like an job ad that's out there that's off-putting to certain demographics. So now there are companies that offer these services to Fortune 500 companies and to startups when they are looking to recruit to test even just like the formatting. You wouldn't have thought about like how an example would be bullet points in the fonts and the kind of terms that are used in recruiting, like using military terms of like we're looking for coding ninjas versus other kinds of terminologies. It turns out that some of these ways of really placing the same exact ad draw a bigger applicant pool that's more diverse and that's more promising. So we need to really kind of use that, sorting and the detection that is enabled by machine learning that we, with our naked eye, would never have thought about.
Well, as the people part and the human resource part, finding and retaining good employees, having that culture of the organization be one where everybody feels fulfilled, perhaps, and fruitful, is becoming more and more important. The study from Infosys goes on to talk about how retention of employees is critical. Companies that increase staff retention between 2020 and 2022 in the midst of the pandemic were almost a fifth more likely to increase their profits and revenue. Retention of employees and attracting the right employees is something that we often talk about. It's easy to talk about, harder to do. Adrian, what is your advice for organizations looking to do a better job at finding and retaining employees? You might be muted, Adrian.
Yep, that's
You need
it.
to
Sorry.
unmute yourself.
Yeah,
That's fine.
it's about we've talked about using some of the tools, but it's also I hope we've moved away from just looking at CVs, but also using sort of AI tools as well to try and sift through particularly technical based employees, what they've done in the wider world. By that I mean, one of the things I look when we're looking at things like application security and security engineers, looking at people that haven't just done their job, but have looked in the contributed to the wider community. I think of things like GitHub and sort of software repositories. Have people contributed to open source? Have people taken part in forums? Have they what have they posted on social media? Do they have a digital footprint? are they known about in the sort of in the wider world? So are they making a contribution to the industry or a contribution to the community? And if they're making a contribution to a wider community, they're going to make a contribution to your employment community as well. So you get a better diverse team, people that are,
Mm.
pardon the older phrase, team players, but you get a better diverse team in those sort of circumstances. So it's about them finding people that are making a wider contribution. And if you can use AI or machine learning tools to do that, all the better.
Automation seems to be at odds in a sense with it could be an empowering technology to make my job easier, make me feel like I'm more competent, or I'm really contributing to, as you say, the organization, or at least the machine of the organization. But it can be at odds also with employee perception or satisfaction in terms of employees are fearful of losing their jobs to AI, for example. Yet it looks like that horse is out of the barn. AI and in automation are soon to rapidly change the climate of the workforce. These two things seem to be at odds. I'll put it out to both of you. How can we use digital transformation to enhance the experience of our employees while also using it in ways that enhance the performance of the organization without those two being at odds?
I think for digital transformation, these are tools that are going to help you make better decisions, or a better informed decision. Because the trouble is, we've lived in a world where we've had just too much data. We've never been able to interpret it from a human perspective very well, even when there was less of it. But now that's why we have to rely on the digital transformation tools, machine learning, to sift through those big data lakes that we collect and never use. If we have the data, we need the tools to sift through it better, to make decisions on it, to narrow down and be able to identify the bits of information we need to make those decisions. So that's really what I think digital transformation is about. And if we have the technology, if that benefits employees as well as the main organization you're working for, then it's a double win-win situation for both.
Should be, yeah, absolutely. It should be the goal itself. All right. Before I move on, Orly, your book is The Equality Machine: Harnessing Digital Technology for a Brighter, More Inclusive Future. What's one way that we can do that, harness technology for a brighter, more inclusive future?
Look, we've always had scarce resources. Just like Adrian said, we've always cared about discovering, or most of us cared about discovering the truth, knowing more about sources of inequality, inaccuracy, our wicked global problems. We want to improve our health and our well-being and safety, and we have these opportunities. So Adrian talked about replacing or complementing human decision making. As someone who studies, my research is about employment practices and human bias, and in every setting, we talked about replacing humans with automation. We've had this long history of humans having a lot of flaws in decision making and biases, and I think we really need to think about opportunities to leverage technology to not only have the comparative advantage of like detecting what are the root causes of certain problems that we want to solve, and debiasing us in the sense of, like, having more consistency. Take a physician that's sorting through mammograms or other radiology, or making decisions about surgery. We actually know now that we are developing AI that can outperform those human decisions and tasks. But also, what I really care about is the scale and the speed in which we can introduce automation to places around the world that have never had access to professional physicians or good drivers or transportation. So developing self-driving cars and connectivity for people in developing countries, women in developing countries that have never had access to financial independence, and just having a connectivity and having a smartphone really is a game changer in their lives. So what I really care about, I wrote The Equality Machine as kind of a contrarian. Funnily enough, I think it's funny to be contrarian and thinking constructively and having more of an optimistic, take about technology, because that's the story of human progress. But we have a lot of alarmist, fears right now going on about like, oh, automation will take all our jobs. Well, first of all, that's the story again of human history. There's always been changes in the ways that we work and the kinds of jobs that are needed. And that's, the story of industrialization and just introducing machines in all sorts of industries. Yes, there's going to be dislocation. There is going to be disruption, and there is going to be a need to think about like social safety nets for people who will lose and are losing their jobs, drivers and, other professions for sure. But I think what we really need kind of that vision of what are the opportunities and how it will affect distributive justice and allow much more access to all these good stuff like health that has traditionally been kind of the purview of just a few.
We are here today with Orly Lobel and Adrian Winkles, and we're talking about digital transformation and employee experience and creating a culture and a workforce capable of accelerating our businesses' digital transformation and indeed cultural transformation. And indeed, Adrian, let's talk a bit about that. Whatever research you look at today, it's clear that assembling a workforce capable of accelerating our business's digital transformation is essential today in order to remain relevant in many ways and compete. What is your advice for organizations looking to do that? What are the skills that are needed and most in demand? Is STEM education preparing new workers coming into the system to be ready for that? What about older employees that we need to either retrain or reskill? Tell us about your perspective on building a workforce.
One of the interesting statistics at the moment is that certainly in UK universities, I can't talk about the rest of the world, but there is a rapid growth in applications for students to study computer science and computing related subjects, because particularly for sort of data analysis and things that involve AI and machine learning, have those that are coming up or leaving tertiary education are now looking to take those sort of careers on board. So there's an opportunity in the growth sector. A lot of professional bodies like the IEEE, British Computer Society, are all saying that these are the skills that are needed now for the upcoming generations. As you're also right, it's also an opportunity to reskill existing workers. I mean, going back to some of the things that both myself and Audie were talking about, that was helping employers, producers, employees make better decisions because of the data the data lakes that are out there, whether it be in the medical field or in my field in security or whatever. Being able to make those better decisions to zero down or narrow down on a problem or problems quickly, you're saving businesses time. You're able to make quicker, more accurate decisions. There'll be people that whose jobs probably are superseded, but that's been the history of industrial evolution. Whenever we've applied automation in factories, we've applied automation in food production in shops, then it comes another shift. It's disruptive technology, and that's something unfortunately that happens. But as long as we have a program of making sure that we can re-educate and get the skills. I mean, we have an international shortage of people within information technology anyway. So it's an opportunity for reskilling the existing workforce as well as the up and coming workforce in those areas to make better use and be able to write the algorithms to apply the data analysis to make those decisions in the future.
Well, well, Adrian, you're a cybersecurity and networking specialist. What are some of the skills that you feel are super important to be competent in today if I'm coming into the workforce in 2023, looking at a 21st century environment?
So I think an aptitude to be able to apply technical skills and mathematical approaches is what I'd be looking for. So it's not just full-blown technologists, but to be able to apply. So if you took cybersecurity as a classic example, it isn't just pure technologists we need. And obviously I'm biased, but for example, people that
Right.
are experts in psychology, because in the cybersecurity space, we need people that understand human skills. So if you think about a lot of cyber attacks are based around social engineering, the ability to get people to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do, and understanding some of those
Mm.
types of attacks and some of those types of approaches requires an understanding of human behavior, which is effectively psychology. So having those sort of skills alongside the technical skills, coming back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of diverse teams, it makes a lot of sense having diverse and complementary skill sets is a terminology I'd really be looking for. I think it,
Right.
particularly in my industry, makes an awful lot of sense now.
Well, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, this sort of confluence between the technology side, you're saying, security is certainly about the technology side of things, but it's also about the human behavioral
Yeah.
side of things as well. And the confluence of those two things is really where the skill comes in. Orly, you're a professor of law. What is your take on on all of this? In other words, how would you be looking at the skills that are necessary that I should be hiring for or developing in myself as we move forward in 2023, building a workforce capable of accelerating not only digital transformation but ultimately cultural transformation within within my enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that needs to be done. I think, from a law perspective, from a policy perspective, it doesn't start with the individual companies, but really, I think that all countries need to think about digital literacy and reskilling earlier on. And again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about how there is too much fear of automation and AI, machine learning, and that has this kind of vicious cycle of not having enough people and certainly not enough diversity in the kind of people that are applying to STEM. So we need to do more of that. Companies need to be smart about, how the horse has left the barn, as you said, the train has left the station. They need to compete on that same level of, kind of anticipating that there is going to be digital transformation. It's happening. So thinking about, what are the competences that are still needed. And I totally agree with Adrian that it's not just engineering and computer science, but really kind of thinking about what matters to us as humans. And so psychology and ethics and sociology and economics, these are all very, very valuable disciplines that will be very powerful as we move on to kind of ask and direct the technology to kind of line up with the goals that we have and continue to have, will continue to have in the future. So again, not kind of giving up control, but really thinking about technology as a tool.
Perhaps that is the area that I've been searching for, where there is an overlap of technology, data analytics, for example, or even automation, machine learning, and the human part of it. The policies that I use to find and retain and train my employees, and the qualities you're talking about, Orly, aren't necessarily things that I would think of necessarily on the top of the skill list if I'm hiring a systems programmer, for example. But if it's built into my process, a more broad encompassment of qualities and training and education that may not traditionally fit that particular niche or that particular posting, but if that becomes part of my overall human resource, if you will, approach and strategy, then I'm building into the process that sort of flexibility and the wider scope of who I consider and how I consider people's talent sets. Do you feel that that is the way that that job will get done in terms of building a more inclusive and more diverse workforce?
Yeah, no, I think it's really perceptive and insightful. So I think that it's the machine human interaction that we really need to focus on. So again, if you're asking me as a law professor, I recently in the equality machine, but also in a separate article that I just posted, it's called the Law of AI for Good. I actually argued that we need to focus much more, not just on kind of whether machines are trustworthy, whether AI is good, but actually how humans and machines operate together from a behavioral perspective. So studying much more the kind of social psychology of how we interact with robots. When do we trust them rationally? So there's a lot of irrationalities. There's sometimes over trust, and sometimes there's under trust. We call it in the literature algorithmic aversion or algorithmic adoration, kind of without discerning what, when should we question things. I think that companies, the smartest companies, will actually be the ones that figure out, like, behaviorally, not to manipulate people. So, there's a lot of that too happening with like consumer interaction online and what we're aware of or not. I actually think that there's an opportunity to figure out how to rationalize different processes. I'll give you an example. Online exchanges, there's always been a lot of irrationalities on how, like, we as people are very bad at negotiating rationally. We don't know what comes into how we assess our employees. How do we price? How do we value? How do we reward? And same with customers or business to business. Like negotiations can be affected by all sorts of things that we're not aware of, like whether you're sitting on a soft chair or on a hard chair. It's actually, there's a lot of research about that. I think that, humans will continue to be the force of negotiations and, getting to the right prices, but we should use AI to figure out what is the right way, the rational way. What is the market? What does the market really look like? And what is the value of our own people and our products?
All right, we're getting down to our last few minutes of the program. If you have any questions or comments for Orly or Adrian, now would be a great time to jump in either in the Q&A section, or we may indeed have some questions here that I'll be looking for here. So now would be the time. In fact, thank you so much. I have been remiss in not checking this more thoroughly. Rebecca says, many top managements across several industries have an efficiency-driven, people-replacing approach when it comes to digital transformation. So my question is this: should digital transformation be seen as a tool for replacing people instead of a great employee retention tool? Orly, Adrian, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I think that we need to recognize that some tasks are replaceable. Like, I actually think about it. I was just at a wonderful conference about law tech and like, will attorneys be replaced? And the answer is some
Okay.
of their tasks, actually the more mundane ones, of contract drafting and just like things that are very boilerplate. It's not a bad thing that we should think about becoming leaner and meaner as companies and replace. But then I think the more creative aspects, the more challenging aspects that we're more, I think as humans, more we enjoy more, we feel that it's more fulfilling. I think there we should look at AI as a tool that we leverage and enhances our own cognitive abilities.
It's an enabler. It helps us make better decisions. That's so yes. All is quite right. Some roles will be replaced, but it will create new roles. But it also means that subject matter experts um, work alongside computing and computer and technical. So two disciplines start meeting, or multiple disciplines meet. So it's an enabler. Yes, there are issues in the strictest sense that some things, um, bad decisions can be made, but humans have been making bad decisions for a very long time. Um,
Hmm.
it could be argued politicians make bad decisions worldwide, but if they were replaced by, we won't go
Let's not go there,
there.
Adrian. All right, Vincent has been kind enough to chime in as well. Vincent has a couple of comments or a couple of questions here. Let's start with the first one here, Hunter. Vincent says many enterprises are using skills framework to provide structure around recruiting and developing their workforces. For new ones exploring this idea, what elements should they bear in mind when crafting such a framework in the first place? Orly, Adrian, you have a thought on that?
It's partly how you. Excuse me while I turn that off. It's really how do you measure the skills? How do you measure that someone's skills meet that framework? We were talking before about CVs. Um, there has to be more measures about. Are you talking about a competency test or some sort of psychometric testing, maybe with a machine learning? Then, but that's always the difficulty with skills frameworks. I think how you assess them. Um, you can go down in the technology side of things. There are certifications, and you, someone else has done the measurement for you because someone else has certified that you have skills to a certain level. But that's not always possible in all roles and all types of jobs, because how do you test some of the skills, human skills, interaction
Mm,
skills, collaboration, and all those types of co-working and all those
mhm,
types of skills? How do you assess them easily, just from a CV, for example?
mm. Interesting. Jonathan has chimed in here with a question that I've had on my mind, and Jonathan asks: should employers drop university degree requirements in its entirety in favor of skills-based hiring to mitigate the practice of overspecking? Orly, what are your thoughts on that?
As a university professor, I certainly think that there's the value in higher education, but I'm also very realistic. And, in chapter 2 of my new book, I actually go and explore all these different ways of screening that um, recognize talent in ways that we never thought about, that are better actually than looking at your resume and just looking, oh yeah, you have this degree from this university. So there's a lot of like using games and video, like facial recognition and emotional recognition, and these are still controversial, but it is the future. Adopting these technologies that figure out different aspects of personality and how you will be interacting with a team, what's a good fit. We have to recognize that there's snake oil in a lot of these products, that some, are not the best, but I actually think that a lot of them outperform this idea of just like, this is the degree you have, and therefore you are a good fit for our organization, which has been, a way of screening traditionally, and it has had a lot of exclusion and, kind of biases built in there, and also it's just not very accurate. So I'm all for, finding all these better ways to not only reskill, but then also kind of find the undervalued talent. I think talent wants to be free, so that, which is the title of my first book, actually. Talent Wants to Be Free, about like mobility and real good competition and retention, and kind of looking for, how you can be the best employer you can, not just with tangible aspects of the job, but really kind of like motivating intrinsic learning, and looking at career trajectories. I think there's a lot more that companies can do on all of that.
All right, very good. Well, we are coming to a close. Vincent has one last question for us. Perhaps, Adrian, you can take just a moment to respond to Vincent. And thank you, Vincent, and the rest of the folks that have been participating today. Vincent asks or comments, it's often said that HR needs to strike a balance between data-driven and people-driven approaches to talent management. Oh, how should this be done in practice? Well, I don't know if we can cover that in just a few moments, but that is the balance, isn't it, Adrian? The striking the balance between a data-driven approach and a people-driven approach.
I think it comes back to something I said earlier, that when you're looking for talent, you're now looking for a diversity of sources of that information. You're not just looking at the resume or the CV that comes in. You're looking at what other people have done in the community, and finding ways of obtaining that information. What your sources are can vary depending on the role, but it isn't just what's written down. It's also going about, when you see a candidate, how do you check their people skills? And I think that's where the technology can then start helping us a bit more.
Well, all right, very good. Well, that is close to the time of our closing tonight. I would like to ask Orly and Adrian just one last thing. If you could give us just one quick action item that our audience can do today to take advantage of your ideas and advice, just 60 seconds or so. Orly, what's your action item for us today?
I think doing your research about what is out there in terms of new products, not thinking that you need to adopt AI on your own, or all the HR kind of innovation on your own. But I think there's a lot of kind of good products out there, and outsourcing and collaborations that can be done. So just being open to kind of using platforms rather than insourcing everything.
And Adrian, 60 seconds. What's one action item that we can use today?
I think about how you can work flexibly with co-workers, other teams, other collaborations, and how you can use technology to help you enable that. Because in doing so, you also boost your own employability, as well as improving your own firm's potential profitability as well.
All right, very good. Adrian Winkles, Orly Lobel, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And the rest of you, thank you for being with us. Join us next week, in fact, every Tuesday at 1600 GMT. Next week, we'll be talking about getting better value from your transformation initiatives. It should be another great discussion. If you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there, and check out my weekly podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But otherwise, that'll do it for this episode of Digital Transformation Talk. Until next week, I'm Kevin Crane. Thanks for watching.